Hey there! Welcome to Film in the Blank. My name's Ian. I watch a lot of movies. Here's everything I watched this month. I started the month off with 1985's Back to the Future, written by Robert Zemeckis and Bob Gale, and directed by Robert Zemeckis. Back to the Future has never been a particular favorite of mine. It feels too mainstream and saturated in the zeitgeist for me to form any sort of personal connection to it. That said, it's still a very strong film that pairs a clever concept with a duo of career-defining performances from Michael J. Fox and Christopher Lloyd. The element that pops the most for me, though, is Robert Zemeckis' breezy, playful direction. That opening panning shot alone does so much to set up the film. It's simple, builds character beautifully, gets some clunky exposition out of the way in a snap, and sets the tone perfectly for everything else to come. Hard to beat that from an opening shot. 4 stars. Then The Reason Marble Quarries Need HR Departments, The Brutalist, written by Brady Corbet and Mona Fastfold, and directed by Brady Corbet. The Brutalist is really an astonishing film across the board. The majestic cinematography and direction, the bellowing score, the full-throated performances, and a fascinating dissection of the relationship between artist and patron that feels incredibly insightful in this age of studios controlling auteur filmmakers. I managed to catch a screening with the director, writers, and cast, and got so much more coloring of the film. Special shout out to Brady Corbet's previous film Vox Lux with Natalie Portman that I think is massively underrated too. 5 stars. Then my favorite foreign film of 2024, The Seed of the Sacred Fig, written and directed by Mohammad Rasulov. Setting aside the insane way this film was shot entirely in secret in Iran, which, holy shit, I love the way this plays with genre, morphing from a political drama to a whodunit to a thriller. I could have used a bit more finessing between the whodunit and thriller sections to help track character and intention better so the last half hour didn't feel so artificially heightened, but not a huge issue. I was blown away with how engrossing the story was despite its shooting constraints, and even if it's just broad strokes, the amount the film is able to communicate about Iran, its society, and its pervasive oppression is wildly impressive. 4.5 stars. Then off to Venice for 1990's The Comfort of Strangers, written by Harold Pinter and directed by Paul Schrader. I love a film that lets you know from the start that no matter how pleasant or picturesque things may appear, something is very off. Think Get Out, Rosemary's Baby, or Mulholland Drive. With The Comfort of Strangers, it's hard to pinpoint what sets off that early alarm, but it's blaring for most of the calm, chit-chatty movie, and by the end, you know why. The film follows a well-to-do couple played by an enamoring Rupert Everett and Natasha Richardson on their Venetian holiday where they've come to decide whether the next step in their relationship is a wedding or a breakup. There they meet a strange couple played by Christopher Walken and Helen Mirren and suddenly view their own relationship in radical new ways. The tension building is fantastic if a little bit drawn out. If this were made today, that humdinger of an ending would have been 3 times as long and started a half hour sooner, which admittedly would be a more entertaining version of this story, but also one less impactful and thematically resonant, so I'll stick with Pinter's version. 4 stars. Then Woof, It's Wolves, written and directed by John Watts. For an action comedy with George Clooney and Brad Pitt as professional fixers, this was boring and impressively bland. I was yearning for some modicum of the kooky chemistry they cooked up in Burn After Reading or the Ocean's films and was left howling at the moon in sorrow. Maybe they should have hired a professional fixer to professionally fix this. 2 stars. Then, for my money, the best film of 2024, Nickel Boys, written by Ramel Ross and Jocelyn Barnes, and directed by Ramel Ross. Nickel Boys is a vibrant tapestry of a film that's so good it had me walking out of the theater wondering, can a focus puller win a Nobel Prize? I've loved Ramel Ross's work since I watched his Oscar-nominated 2018 documentary Hale County This Morning This Evening, and I love that Nickel Boys was his next project because he pulls his patient, humane documentary filmmaking and combines it with a narrative crying out for that angle. I managed to catch a Q&A with Ramel Ross, producer Jeremy Kleiner, and star Ethan Harris, and they touched on a number of truly fascinating elements of the film, from adapting the novel to the first-person cinematography. The montage that takes up the last 10 minutes or so is my favorite section of filmmaking from 2024 period, and Nickel Boys deserved so many more Oscar noms than the measly 2 it got. 5 stars. Next, some Kurosawa with 1961's Yojimbo, written by Akira Kurosawa and Ryuzo Kikushima, and directed by Akira Kurosawa. I'm on a quest this year to watch more Kurosawa and Bergman films, and Yojimbo comes highly recommended as Kurosawa at his funniest. As the titular samurai, Toshiro Mifune plays Sanjuro with so much swagger, humor, and honestly bitchiness that it's hard not to be charmed. Kurosawa seems eager to make sure Sanjuro's quirks are always peeking through, even as the brewing town feud around him intensifies. And just like in Seven Samurai, even though there's humor present in many parts, that doesn't mean it's not still shot with incredible artistry and precision throughout. Extremely looking forward to watching the sequel Sanjuro very soon. 4 stars. Next, got milk? It's Babygirl, written and directed by Helena Rain. Nobody puts Babygirl in a corner unless that's what she's into, in which case go for it. Fighting challengers for the uber-horny softcore crown of 2024, Babygirl wasn't quite the thriller I was expecting, but that's not really a bad thing. Helena Rain smartly decided to avoid the played-out domestic thriller that was at its heyday in the 80s and has faded into lowbrow schlock in recent years. Instead, she structured the film purely around female desire and the difference between power and sexual dominance. Loved Nicole and her chemistry with Harris. Honestly, they felt so in sync with each other I could have seen the story explore even more nuance in their relationship because they would have been able to handle it splendidly. 4 stars. Next, Mr. Tambourine Man himself and a Complete Unknown, written by James Mangold and Jay Cox, and directed by James Mangold. Despite being a little too muted overall as a narrative film, the performances are phenomenal across the board. Even though it's Free Will and Timmy's movie through and through, I couldn't help but wish Monica Barbaro's Joan Baez was in every frame of the film. She's enamoring, darkly funny, and the girl can sing. One of my favorite supporting performances of the year. 3.5 stars. Next, some early John Carpenter with 1978's Someone's Watching Me, written and directed by John Carpenter. It's hard for a polite TV movie to make a name for itself when a film from the same director with a similar plot comes out the same year and defines the horror genre for decades to come. And while this film is miles away from the heights of Halloween, you can see a lot of John Carpenter's burgeoning style popping in here and there. For a more modern take on this voyeuristic apartment stalker subgenre, I'd recommend 2022's intriguing Watcher starring Micah Monroe. 3 stars. Next, another certified Hanukkah gem, 2009's The White Ribbon, written and directed by Mikhail Haneke. In a month with several 5-star watches, the one that stuck in my mind the most has to be The White Ribbon. It's part mystery thriller, part dark historical drama that, in typical Mikhail Haneke fashion, seems uninterested in giving you a totally clear idea of what is truly happening in the film. As slightly frustrating as that is on some level, it's a gift on other levels because the film is able to live on as a puzzle to tinker with, to reassess, to debate with myself. It's chilling in a way the beauty of the cinematography seems to coldly reinforce, and I'm all in on a rewatch very soon. 5 stars. Then a movie not called September 5th for some reason, September 5, written by Tim Fellbaum and Moritz Binder, and directed by Tim Fellbaum. The editing is the standout for me here. I wasn't as enthralled by the Oscar-nominated screenplay as others, but I get why this kind of tightly wound and well-paced historical thriller is right up the Academy's alley. 4 stars. Then I watched 2022's Saint Omer, written by Alice Diop, Amrita David, and Marie Ndiaye, and directed by Alice Diop. I'm pissed I didn't know this was an intimate French courtroom drama with a dash of surrealism. If I did, I'd have put this on way sooner. The film follows Rama, a pregnant novelist, as she becomes increasingly fascinated with the trial of a Senegalese mother who left her infant to drown. The case unfurls in the same conversational manner that made Justine Trier's Anatomy of a Fall so deliciously watchable, except whereas Anatomy of a Fall focuses on whether a crime was committed, Saint Omer focuses instead on why a crime was committed. It's a much more delicate film that blends existential horror with art house character study perfectly. 4.5 stars. Then Arnold goes meta in 1993's Last Action Hero, written by Shane Black and David Arnott, and directed by John McTiernan. If I'd have seen this movie as a kid, all about getting transported into an action movie, there's a good chance I would have made this movie my entire identity. Thankfully, I didn't see it until this month and got over the fun premise pretty quickly to find not much meat on the bone. What it does have is Tywin Lannister as a one-eyed gun-wielding goon, Danny DeVito as a cartoon cat cop, and MC Hammer and Melvin Van Peebles as themselves. Honestly, work. 2.5 stars. Then Clint's supposedly final film, Juror No. 2, written by Jonathan A. Abrams and directed by Clint Eastwood. First, it's pretty damn genius to cast Nicholas Hoult with his baby blues as flustered guy who's on the verge of crying the whole movie. Still, this felt more like the plot of a quality short film, but it didn't have enough circulating in the story to keep a feature-length runtime chugging. And heavy hitters like Toni Collette and J.K. Simmons had too little to do as well. 3 stars. Next, my Western for the month, 1957's The Tall T, written by Burt Kennedy and directed by Bud Boetticher. I finally dug into Criterion's renowned Western box set and didn't love my first find. The Tall T felt extremely run-of-the-mill in the plot department, and it felt too small and lackadaisical in scope. I did like the cinematography, but not much more. 2.5 stars. Then He's Coming, Nosferatu, written and directed by Robert Eggers. Robert Eggers' take on this more than century-old cinematic ripoff of Dracula delivers on his moody style and fleshes out the original story to greater effect. Jaron Blaschke's icy, black-and-white cinematography is phenomenal and definitely sticks in my mind as the truest standout element of the whole film, including that whammy of a Nosferatu full frontal shot. The film didn't have much of Eggers' trademark darkly philosophical bent, so I'm very much looking forward to his next project, Werewolf, that's a truly original story from him. 4 stars. Next, a tidy French relationship drama, 2011's The Kid with a Bike, written and directed by Jean-Pierre Dardenne and Luc Dardenne. The Dardennes film 2 Days, One Night from 2014 is one of my all-time faves, so I wanted to explore more of their filmography with this sweetly troubled look at the bond between a neglected child and an empathetic hairdresser. The Dardennes' commitment to small, human-forward stories is clearly their calling card. It didn't stun me like 2 Days, One Night, but it still packs some bites of emotional genius. 3.5 stars. Then Ho Ho Hands in the Air, it's 1978's The Silent Partner, written by Curtis Hanson and directed by Daryl Duke. This is a cat and mouse thriller, but the cat and mouse both have little Santa hats on. The script is from Curtis Hanson before he moved full-time into directing with films like LA Confidential and 8 Mile, and it has some panache for a small-reaching heist film. There isn't much going on visually with low-budget 70s sets and no real thought toward color, but I liked how it was shot and the amount of tension that went into the framing and pacing. The Christmas elements don't bring that much to the film, particularly with the 4 different topless scenes, abrupt violence, and out-of-the-blue gore. 3 stars. Then the Coppola dynasty strikes again. It's The Last Showgirl, written by Kate Gersten and directed by Gia Coppola. It's a shame the writing in this is so weak, and that like 60% of the film is messy B-roll of Pam loitering on the strip, because the performances the rest of the time are quite nice. Sad this wasn't the glittering comeback vehicle for Pam that was advertised, but she should definitely still be proud of what she brought to it and the potential for this to springboard her into other meaty roles. 2.5 stars. Then some good old-fashioned nun drama with 1945's The Bells of St. Mary's, written by Dudley Nichols and directed by Leo McCarey. After being bored to tears with 1944's Best Picture winning Going My Way, I only checked out the sequel because Ingrid Bergman graced it with her presence. She's absolutely the best part of the film, which still suffers from a dry narrative about the staff of a Catholic school trying to prevent its closure. It turns up some emotion toward the end, thanks again to Ingrid, but just an okay 40s film. 2.5 stars. Next, the most colorful movie of the month, The Room Next Door, written and directed by Pedro Almodovar. Every Almodovar film I've seen has been visually stunning and philosophically rich. He's just not on my list of directors that speak to me much. I've really only been blown away by one of his films, 2006's Voltaire, and everything else, including The Room Next Door, has been good but muted. I loved the first 20 minutes that played with somewhat Lynchian ideals and felt cinematically impactful. Everything after that just felt so-so. 3 stars. Then a true tearjerker of a doc, Sugarcane, directed by Emily Cassie and Julian Brave Noisecat. Sugarcane is a beautifully shot portrait of how horrific sexual abuse and trauma is passed down generationally, following the Williams Lake First Nation tribe as members and researchers investigate crimes committed at a Canadian residential school. It's some delicate filmmaking covering brutal subject matter, but the filmmakers make sure to focus on how hard the Native communities have worked to rebuild after these atrocities amidst the little that is being done societally to atone. It would have been a very worthy Oscar documentary feature winner in another year, but a nomination is still an achievement. 4.5 stars. Then, Every Time a Bell Rings, an angel flirts hard with your wife. It's 1947's The Bishop's Wife, written by Robert E. Sherwood and Leonardo Bercovici, and directed by Henry Koster. The Bishop's Wife is a cute little film that made me thankful Cary Grant existed, and even more thankful that big, dumb, ugly hats went out of fashion. Cary stars as an angel sent to help a bishop and his disaffected wife reconnect and rediscover what truly matters in life. There's some nice practical effects work and pleasant enough scene work to make this a pretty enjoyable watch. 3 stars. Next, a film about a topic everyone can agree on, cops! It's 1988's The Thin Blue Line, directed by Errol Morris. This is a solid doc from Errol Morris exploring the true crime murder of a Dallas cop and the man who the cops set in their sights as the perpetrator. I had genuine trouble focusing on much of the film though, after one person described himself as a work all day, creep all night type. For that phrase alone, I bumped this up to 3.5 stars. Next, I'm pouring one out for Derek Zoolander with 1990's Blue Steel, written by Catherine Bigelow and Eric Red, and directed by Catherine Bigelow. The first half hour of this is pretty good, setting up another intriguing cat and mouse stalker plot, but when you realize the cat is Ron Silver delivering on an over-the-top, goofy performance that would make even Al Pacino say, "Hey, tone it down, buddy," this flags hard. The tone jumps around constantly, especially when Ron Silver is hamming it up on screen, and the sex scene between two characters truly comes out of nowhere and very clearly didn't belong in the film, particularly at the point it came in the runtime. 2 stars. Next, the hardest watch of the month, 1955's Night and Fog, directed by Alain Resnais. Even as much as the Holocaust has permeated media and culture, there are still moments in this thing that nothing can really prepare you for. At just over a half-hour runtime, Night and Fog hones in on specific aspects of life in 2 Polish concentration camps with confronting documentary filmmaking and eerily eloquent poetic narration. It's a true meditation on evil that is just as important now as it was generations ago, and it's consummate filmmaking through and through. 5 stars. Then a huge disappointment, Blitz, written and directed by Steve McQueen. Blitz is a pastiche of experiences from a specific moment in history that amounts to much less than a fully realized Steve McQueen film. Steve McQueen was so focused on immersing you in the world of besieged 1940s London that he forgot to craft a story worth telling in that world. Sorry Saoirse, but this is a blitzkrieg flop. 2 stars. Next, a feel-good while also feeling kinda bad documentary, Daughters, directed by Angela Patton and Natalie Ray. This quiet little doc about a prison program that allows inmates to attend a dance with their daughters had some good momentum going into Oscar season, but it couldn't seal the deal on a nomination, even with Netflix's backing. It's at its strongest when it shows the emotional hardening several daughters of inmates go through as they grow up with their fathers removed from their lives, showing how punishing the prison system is for the most innocent and bystanders. Didn't have a ton of bite, but 3.5 stars. And I finished the month out with Y2K, written by Kyle Mooney and Evan Winter, and directed by Kyle Mooney. This was cute at times, but an absolute mess story-wise. Few of the character arcs made sense, and the genuinely clever premise fizzles out just as quickly as it starts. 2 stars. Let me know in the comments, what are your thoughts on these movies? Any others I should check out? What crimes have you witnessed Santa commit? Also stay tuned for other great commentary videos, reviews, video essays, and more. You can check me out on Letterboxd at Cineramadome24 or on TikTok at Film in the Blank. I appreciate you liking and subscribing. See you next time.